podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, a leading international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Julie Flower, and in this new series, I'm delighted to explore innovative ways in which coaching is being used for social good. Each week, we'll take a detailed look at a different scheme, seeking to make meaningful impact in a specific field of lived experience. We aim to inspire you with powerful coach and client perspectives, speaking directly to those involved, and to challenge all of our assumptions about what coaching is and who it's for. Hello, and on today's show, I am delighted to be joined by three wonderful women, and we will be talking about Writing for Resilience, a coaching program that is specifically working with survivors of domestic abuse. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Charmaine Pollard, who has developed and delivered the scheme. Hi there, Charmaine.
Hi, really good to be here.
Yeah, lovely to have you here. Hi. And also I'm joined by two participants, two clients of the scheme, and to protect their privacy, they are using pseudonyms today. And I'd love to welcome Priya and Shari. Hi.
Hey.
Morning.
Morning. Hello, all of you. Great to have you here. I'll just hand over and let you just say hello and introduce yourself in whatever way you'd like to. So, Charmaine, hi, morning.
Hi, I'm Charmaine. As I said, great to be here. I'm a coach and I'm also a certified poetry therapist, and that essentially means using poetry and writing as a therapeutic tool. It's something that I love. I love creativity. It's something that I really enjoyed when I was a youngster. I used to get a paint set every year at Christmas, a bigger one each year. And I'm really pleased that I've been able to use creativity into my profession.
Oh, wonderful. How wonderful to be able to incorporate that love into your work. And I think it'd be fascinating to hear more about how that creativity comes out within this programme. Priya, hello.
Hi, Julie. Thanks again for having me on the show. By way of introductions, I'm a mom, a survivor, as you introduced us. And I also enjoy reading and writing. And I didn't think one day that it would help me get back and find my enthusiasm and confidence in life. But I do enjoy writing, and I used to write a diary, which I stopped sometime during the course of the relationship and picked it back up now.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us, Priya. It's great to have you here. And Shari, hello.
Hi. Yeah, also thanks for inviting us along. So yeah, I'm Shari. I am a mum. I am a survivor of a domestic abusive relationship and did the Writing for Resilience programme with Charmaine. And I would describe myself as creative, but interestingly, not around writing and poetry, but the programme has opened that up, as well as opening up lots of doors since doing the programme. Yeah, I find myself leaning into poetry a lot more these days. That's a bit about me.
Thank you, Shari. It's, again, great to have you here. And I'm so excited about this conversation because even just in those introductions, we've got this melding together of coaching approaches, of creativity in different forms, and also, of course, of working with a particular group of people with some kind of shared lived experience. So I'm really interested in what we can learn as coaches and also from a wider societal point of view, really. So Charmaine, maybe over to you just to have a little bit of background, if you like, to the Writing for Resilience coaching programme and what it's all about.
Yeah, so Writing for Resilience, it's a coaching program. It's a 20-week program specifically for survivors of domestic abuse. And in that 20 weeks, we have online workshops and coaching clinics. And we also have women leaders that are doing excellent things in their professions. And they come along and talk to the women on the program as well, talk about maybe how they might have set up a business, and various different topics they'll come in and talk about. There's one-to-one coaching as well. And there's also my book, what I've written, Writing for Resilience, hence the name of the programme. And you work through the book. And what's great about the book, it is a workbook. And if you really want to develop yourself, think about who you are, think about what legacy you want to leave. There's lots of exercises, there's poetry, writing in response to this poetry to help you to get an understanding of who you are and how you might then go on to create a new vision for your life and really move towards a more fulfilling future. I think a lot of women I've certainly worked with talk about wanting their mojo back, wanting to be that person who they used to be before they ended up in that type of relationship. And my job, Mary Oliver has got a poem called The Journey, and it starts with, one day you finally knew what you had to do and begin. And that's what I do. I help women on that journey to take action, beginning to achieve that life that they've always dreamed of and to really dream big.
That in itself sounds like a very compelling vision, and I'm fascinated that this involves so many different components with the group coaching, the speakers, the one-to-one, and then also, as you say, this workbook throughout. And in terms of what led you to this point, Charmaine, to offer and develop this programme, what was it that really made you want to do this?
And also, I've just forgotten, there's also a dedicated WhatsApp group where they share insights around the book, any ideas, any learning. And this is where women support each other and they're cheerleaders for each other, helping each other on this journey of setting successful goals and achieving it. The reason why I created this programme, having worked in the ending violence against women and girls sector for over 20 years, although there are limited resources, often when you come out of a relationship like that, there's support for you, there's counselling, there's the healing, but then you get to a point, what's next? And what I didn't see, I saw this real gap, and there isn't anything there for the next stage, so that women become great leaders and they also create their own wealth. And that's something that I really wanted to do. And I recognise, and I think a lot of women often, they've got the resource and they've got the skills in their hands already, and they don't always recognise that. And it's important, I think, for me to be able to pull that out and draw that out in a really positive way. It's really interesting because we've just started the second programme, because I was lucky to get funding again because of the success of the last one. And I was talking to one person, we were thinking about what other things she could do. And I said, well, what other things? I find women often have other things that they can do. She went, oh, yes, I'm a qualified painter and decorator. And she goes, oh, maybe I can teach other women how to do that. So I think sometimes it's that we already know we've got these skills there and resources, but it's pulling them out. And I didn't see a programme like this in the sector.
Yeah, so it sounds like a really, as you say, unique programme in the sector, but fulfilling that gap. Moving to you, Shari and Priya, what attracted you to what sounds like quite a commitment as a programme, 20 weeks, the workbook, all of the group and one-to-one activities? What was it that really made you want to get involved? Shall I go to Shari first, then Priya?
Oh, I thought Priya was going to go first.
I don't mind.
No, it's fine. So I initially did push back a bit of resistance, which I suppose comes from the chaos that you've been through and the recognition of moving on. And then actually I had a really good chat with Charmaine, an intro chat with her and one of the others who also did go on to do the course. And it just became really evident that it was an opportunity to really have more time with Charmaine's knowledge and skills, and also enable us to move forward so that you don't become stagnant, that your survivor isn't your ending of your story. It was a chapter so that you can then move forward. And I think that was the draw for me, that I just felt that the phrase where you're treading water all the time, and it enabled that to move forward, was the draw for me, certainly.
Thank you. That strong sense of forward momentum I'm getting.
Yeah.
Priya, how about for you?
I think in that sense, my draw was similar, that I wanted to move on. And as Charmaine was saying earlier, there is almost a gap, and I didn't see myself coming into this situation. I certainly didn't know how to navigate my way out of it. But I did know, and I felt ready at that time to actually seek out something like this, which was about moving on and not just being stuck in a certain identity. And then the other thing that was helpful was, I think, unlike Shari, I had, even before, so Charmaine had done a group counseling program before we got put onto it. And I had benefited from some CBT and counseling before that. So I'd begun to value what professionals can bring to this. And also I didn't have anybody personally that I could speak to, friends or family, that I could speak to about this, who would understand, who would be informed about it. So I was very keen on getting professional assistance. So when Charmaine mentioned the program, I was very keen to be on it.
Thank you, Priya. And you've raised a really good point there around which point coaching is the most relevant form of support. And Charmaine, obviously you are a counsellor as well. I'm wondering, what is it that really makes this specific intervention need to be coaching? And what are the considerations perhaps for some of the boundaries?
I think after you've come out of a relationship like that, because sometimes I think both Shari and Priya have talked about surviving, and it's almost that next step. You've survived the relationship, because at least 2 women are killed each week because of domestic abuse in this country, which is really alarming, and it's an awful statistic. But I think you get to a point where you've survived it, and it's what next? And the what next is, how do I rebuild? How do I create a legacy that I want to leave, that not I'm coerced into, but this is what I want to do? So that was what was really important for me to be thinking about. What next? And it's moving past talking about the traumas. It's almost like that next stage. And it's like what Shari said, that's not the only part of the story. There's another story that can be written. And it's about how they then go on to rewrite the next part of the story. This is where I am now. I've used the resilience, I've used the skills to survive, and what happens next? And it's about where I am now and where I want to be and where I could be. And actually, it's also about that dreaming big, because the one byproduct, if you like, of domestic abuse is low self-worth, lack of self-confidence, as well as the mental illness, the anxiety, the depression, all those sorts of things. But it's like, now that I've got what I've got and I've got a new trajectory that I can set, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so that's why I wanted to put all those different elements together. And also because I'm so passionate about being a poetry therapist and how poetry and writing can absolutely propel you further. Because I read something quite recently, 42% of people that write down their goals are more likely to achieve it. So I wanted something that women could hold on to as well, and something that's written and it's there and it's evidence, but also they can also see where they started and where they are now. So really looking back and recognising how resilient that they've become as well. So I think that's what was really important in the what happens next. I think it's that stage, and it's what Mary Oliver talks about. It's a journey. And I think it's a point in your journey where you stop looking back and you start thinking about, what do I want to do now? How do I want to show up in the world? And what do I want my story to be?
That's really powerful, Charmaine, and that sense of, really looking forward, creating that vision for yourself. And I'm wondering whether I can go to Priya and then to Shari just to get some sense of how this sense of looking to the future played out during the coaching. What was useful about doing some of that work together and also in a one-to-one way? Priya?
That was really powerful, because even as a requirement for coming onto the program, Charmaine asked us to fill out like a questionnaire, a form. And one of the things is, why do you want to be on the program? And something around the lines of, what do you want to achieve? And by forcing yourself, make an application and write down, I think I was forced to think about what I actually want rather than just having how you think about it. But Charmaine was saying, when you write it down, then you put a little bit more thought and energy into it. And just as preparation for this podcast, I asked Charmaine for my form again. And it was really interesting because in the first version of the form, I'd actually written down everything from the sort of place I want to be in, the sort of wraparound childcare I would need, because I did want to go back into work in a certain line. And it was quite nice to see how much it wasn't concrete in terms of the goals at that stage, but the vision was very much there. And I think that was a big part of the, if you've seen a vision that you like and it's yours, then you do get the energy to work towards it.
Yeah, thank you. That vision and it's yours. Yeah, that ownership. Lovely. And Shari?
Just listen to Priya and thinking for myself, I think it was very much that it enabled me to take control back of my time, because we were doing chapters and then we meet weekly. So we needed to work through the chapter and there were exercises to do. That made me carve out some time to do that. And then you've got the championing of everybody else. And then, so you start to see the momentum is created. Like you set your goal and then you can see the momentum and the shift within yourself. Because for a long time, for whatever reason, during or post, how your time is managed is often dictated by others, whether that's an ex-partner or whether it's agencies that end up being involved in your life. So the fact that you have got this control and saying, actually, I was also looking through my original form. Actual fact, I was quite chuffed with myself how much I accomplished when I looked through. But yeah, I think that would be certainly something for me of just like the individual work, but also the teamwork, and everyone was championing each other, because no two goals were the same for any one of us within the group. It really knitted together like a complex web of just championing. It was really special, actually.
Yeah, and listening to you, it really makes me think about the power of having that peer group and that group element as well as one-to-one. And sometimes I think group coaching is either misunderstood or almost thought of as not as effective as one-to-one, whereas actually I find there's a unique power around that group experience. Charmaine, what made you design the programme in this way with these different facets, if you like?
I love individual work, but there's something about a group. When a group of people get together, and I think when a group of women get together, there's an energy in a group. And I think it's so powerful because when we're in a group, your story is my story. We might look very different. We might be different ages, our culture, our race, but your story is my story. And I think there's something about that in itself, like what Shari was talking about. It creates that momentum. It creates that sharing. We're egging each other on. We really want each other to achieve, and we really want everybody to get what it is that they're set out to do. So I really love that group side of things. But I also think it's really important to have that one-to-one individual time to really focus in on your goals. What is it that you really want? And I think it's what Priya had said earlier. You don't always often consider, what do I want? What do I want my life to look like? Where do I want to live? And in those intake questionnaire, I wanted them to fill in those details. And only when you fill in the details of the vision can you then set goals to achieve that. And I love the fact that Priya's here, because Priya set a goal right at the very beginning to buy her home. And by the end of it, she had done that. So in essence, when you set these goals, you don't know what's going to happen, but the impossible becomes a possible. I think so. I wanted different aspects of the program because I think we're all unique, and some people will warm more to group work, some people warm more to individuals. So that's why it was really important to have so many different aspects of the program. And then you had that continuous support. I think we set our agreement sort of 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, so we could share the wins, so that support was still continuing. And Shari also set a fantastic goal, and maybe you want to talk about it, Shari, because I think even the why in terms of you setting this goal I thought was really important as well.
My daughter and I remained in what was all of our home, but I felt that for various reasons it had been a house, not a home. And one of my goals that I said to Charmaine was that I would like to open up what I knew was a closed fireplace, because there's something for me growing up that fireplaces are really nostalgic and homely. And I set myself that challenge because I wanted to make sure that the ghosts of the past were laid to rest within the home, and the home became a new space for the both of us. I know people listening to the podcast won't be able to see it, but I am sat right in front of it just to show it off a bit.
We could testify it is a beautiful fireplace.
Yeah. And that was actually a project that my daughter did chip in. And also for her to see that it doesn't need to be stereotypical about certain tasks being carried out by men, and a woman is capable of doing such tasks as well. So it was a real labour of love and a learning curve. And in actual fact, I felt so confident after doing it, and with everyone's support and just cheering me on, that there's a second one within my home. And I did message Charmaine one day, and it was way after the course had finished. And I was like, look what I've done. And I managed to open up the second one. And because I knew what I was doing by then, I turned it around within a week. That was a massive achievement for me, and I get the pleasure of it. And it's just shifted everything within the home.
Thank you, Shari. Again, something about that setting a goal, achieving it, and then that confidence that comes from that. And as you say, that shift in the whole atmosphere, that's obviously been very compelling for you. And I'm wondering, Priya, thinking about your goal that you set yourself and how far you've come, what are your reflections on the power of setting goals within this programme?
I think it wasn't so much about setting a goal in the process, because through work and we've done goal setting exercises all the time. But there was something in this one about this being a personal goal. So a little bit like Shari, I guess the goal itself is less important. It was about how personal it was and why it mattered to me. I think the other thing that was happening with this was it was a tangible way through the program to feel like I was working on myself. Because in other ways, like Charmaine was saying earlier, the effects of being in an unhealthy relationship can be so multifaceted that you don't even know how much it's impacted your personality. So the same way to come out of it, of course, there was mental breakdown and this and that, like those are the tangible things. But to actually come out of it can feel quite hard. But through the course of this program, even just reflecting back on some things and being able to reference things through, say, the chapters or the group, I could see how I was making progress, and that was invaluable, not to speak about the support, the peer group that we had. So in working towards that one goal, almost I was achieving a lot of other things and filling myself and becoming more and more capable. The other thing I do want to say, though, is that because this goal was personal, I now derive so much joy from my place that while people will complain about mortgages and things like that, which I also always will, but I also see it as a big blessing. So it's not just having a place of my own. It symbolizes a lot more. So I think I also then enjoy my place a lot more than, say, other people would.
Thank you, Priya. Yeah, that sense of this has to have meaning to you, and it's very much directed by each of you as participants. And I think that's the real sense I'm getting from this programme. It's very well thought through, it's very well structured, but actually fundamentally it's also very personal as well.
Can I just say, Julie, actually on that front, that I think that I certainly, when I was looking back through my papers, I noticed that I'd said that I want to find who I am again, because I think, I don't know, Priya, if you would agree, but I think most of us would all say that we lost who we were, and I would never describe it now as saying I want to find the old me, because of everything that happened. The person I was before is always going to be different to who I am now. But it enabled us to have that cocooning, like caterpillar into a butterfly moment, is how I would describe it. That you can flourish yourself again, that you recognise that you have all of this, for want of a better word, experience underneath your belt, but the momentum really shifts you forward into a newer, brighter version of yourself.
I totally agree with that, Shari. And I love the analogy that you've drawn of in that cocoon, and the fact that you describe what happened as an experience rather than as a cause of like putting blame on it. And I think the program was also helpful in that sense, because it talks about, there are chapters where we talk about think back to your childhood or very early days. So your starting point is also not a bad episode, because some people could argue that the fact that you end up in a certain kind of relationship is also because you've got certain traits that, so there could be all of that. I think the commonality was that we're all survivors, but we were all exploring our journeys from much before and going much beyond, which is why we can see this just as an experience. And again, same as you, I don't want to say we want to go back to the old me, but almost appreciate who we've become. And almost as the quote that you were saying, it's a journey that we're on. So almost keen for the future as well to see what else can we become.
Yeah, very powerful insights. And I'm wondering, Charmaine, as you sit listening to Priya and Shari, what's coming up for you?
Getting a bit emotional as well. Yeah, it's really just exciting just hearing both of them share that and the impact that it's had. And I think there is something about when you put a lot of thought into a program, because it is personal and because I want to see women succeed. I was a teen mom and I've had lots of difficulties in my life. And I always said to myself, if I can get through this, then I want to be in a position to help other people. And I'm really pleased that that's what I'm doing. So for me, it's about hearing that, the success that actually I'm a brighter version of who I was in spite of what I've experienced, in spite of what I've gone through. And this idea that, there's even more that I can do. That's all for me. In any program, in any workshop, anything I deliver, I want people to have more confidence. I want them to be more resilient, because when you're coming from a resilience and confident place, there's so much more you can do with whatever it is that you want your legacy to be. And I'm really hot on legacy. I really want people to think about Stephen Covey at one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. And one of them is start with the end in mind. And it's that, isn't it? That's what the important thing is. What's your ending going to be? When you get to the end, what's going to be on your tombstone? And if your dream is to help hundreds and thousands of women, what is it that you need to be doing now in order for that to happen? Or if you're in your rocking chair and you're much older, what is it that you want to have achieved in your life? And what steps do you need to take now in order for that to happen? Who can help you on this journey? Who do you know that's already took that journey and been successful? Who do you admire? Who inspires you? And what have they done in order for them to have achieved the goals that they've achieved and the life that they're living, and they're happy and this is what they want to leave? Because I think there's something about when you influence women, you change communities and you really do change the world. And that's something that I think is crucial, and that's something that I really want us all to be doing. And so as Priya and Shari and others have this program, they'll go on to do the same thing for their children and their community. And so they already are amazing, but we'll raise even more amazing women. And that's something that I really want to see, having, like I say, worked in this sector and how it's a gendered crime and so many women are impacted by the trauma of domestic abuse. So I really want to address that and change things for people.
Charmaine, your commitment and enthusiasm come through so strongly, and it makes me think to why I wanted to produce this whole series, because one of my feelings is that often coaching has been the preserve for a fairly small, fairly privileged group of people, and actually coaching can do so much good in the wider world, as you are all demonstrating. But I suppose with my realist hat on as well, Charmaine, we all need to pay the bills. We all need to keep the lights on. And you mentioned that you've had one round of this programme and then you've got funding for another round. So I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about how you've managed to get this programme resourced, how you've managed to persuade others that this is impactful enough that it's worth investing in.
So when I created the programme, what I also did was brought on board a researcher, and it's somebody that I work with in my work, and she interviewed the women. We've got an evaluation report and the results were just astounding. So for example, when I also started, I did an assessment around anxiety and depression, because anxiety and depression is a byproduct, if you like, of domestic abuse. A lot of women who experience domestic abuse would also be experiencing mental illness as well. And just looking at the report in front of me, it says average levels of depression for the group decreased by 66%, and the anxiety levels decreased by 67%. So that's within 20 weeks. We've moved from moderate and severe levels of depression, and that was reduced significantly till it was just normal. And the same was for both of them. And the resilience levels, we assessed the resilience levels, again, that increased as well. So in terms of a success, it was successful, and also the goals and the confidence. So that was also documented. So yeah, I think once our funders saw that, I thought that they had no choice really but to offer it again. And like I said, we're doing the second round of programme, and there's a maximum of 12 women so that we can really focus in on really making that difference.
That's really helpful, Charmaine. And I know obviously you won't want to name the funder, but are we talking about public funding here?
A local authority, yeah, it's a local authority. And the reason we're not sharing is because, again, we want to make sure that they're anonymised, the participants are anonymised, yeah.
Yeah, of course. But I think the fact that you have that evidence, I'm sure that listeners will be very interested in evidence-based practice, and the fact that you can really show this demonstrable shift in the statistics, but also the power of hearing voices. Priya, Shari, others, really powerful. I wonder if we could take just a slight change of tack now, because I'm really intrigued about the whole writing element, the poetry element, the whole sort of creativity element, if you like, and how that plays in a very practical way to the work. I'm wondering, I might go to Priya first. Can you think of an example of how you used writing in the coaching and what it gave you that maybe you wouldn't have got otherwise?
I think a few things. One was, I will touch a little bit about the poetry as well. I think just reading, as I said, I've been somebody who likes reading and writing. So just reading somebody articulate something that you're feeling was really powerful. So I remember there were lots of tears on this program. Even just reading some of the poetry, some were by little girls, people who'd been in all kinds of situations. And I think for me, that was, the crying was cathartic, but also just reading something articulate made me feel like, okay, somebody gets it, or this is exactly how I feel. So there was that validation of feelings. And then being able to write down things did different kinds of things. I think it's hard for me to single out like the one thing that it did, but the one thing that I can talk about that it still does today is I've got my notes from back then. So every now and then I might take out my notes if I feel like, or I remember something and I want to go back and reference it. Or if I even just stumble upon the notes, if I just happen to stumble upon them, then just flipping through the pages will either bring back, oh my God, I've come a long way, seeing where I've come from or what was I thinking. And sometimes also what's interesting is that I may still be experiencing similar things, in the sense I may have similar challenges with work or with my daughter, but I can tell just by reading it that I'm responding to it very differently. Even just having it written down, like that record of it, even now is very helpful. And like I said, in the moment, it was helpful for different reasons. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, Priya. Thank you. And how about for you, Shari?
I think because, as I said earlier on, I'm not someone that was naturally drawn to poetry prior to the programme, but it was really interesting to see variations of different poetry by different people. And I always remember there's one that really stands out, and I think it's from someone Charmaine possibly worked with that had been in prison, and it was a really moving poem, and it just reminds me that we're all human with all different experiences, and it has really opened up an interest for me of just looking into poetry a bit more, or sometimes just really simple poetic quotes or meaningfulness behind things. And it enabled me to be really reflective. There was you write in response to a poem and it might evoke something. As we said, we went back really way back to childhood and writing on that. I found it very mindful to do because you're completely in the zone. In particular, when I was doing the writing, I would take myself out and go and work with headphones in a space in a cafe or something. And I just found it felt like you see these films where the world is buzzing past people and they're like almost stood still. Like it gave me that opportunity to feel like completely in the zone of what I was doing. And that might not work for everyone, but that was just what was right for me. And yeah, I just enjoyed the entire process of the reflections and the creativity, and it drew something out of me that I didn't know was there, really.
Thank you. Yeah, what I'm getting from you both is this idea of the different sort of power, the shift of using something like poetry or doing reflective writing, and this idea of enabling us to access things, maybe more things in another way, that wider awareness that I think perhaps you don't always get just by having a general conversation, powerful though it can be. Priya, did you have another thing to add?
I was just going to jump in when Shari was describing the program. One thing that I remembered was we were actually responding very often. We'd be responding to cues. So there'd be this text and then write, what did you think of something specific in there? But also very often the exercises would be around, now go back and look at what you've written and why did you write this? So as Shari was saying, like she would reflect upon it, but even if you didn't, it was designed to make you reflect on things. And I think that was, again, really powerful because words do have a very profound impact on us. And when you're reading how you're talking to yourself and then shifting that or responding to it, then you're changing the conversation that you're having with yourself, but also noticing the sort of conversation that you're having with yourself. So I think, again, that was something that was clearly intentionally designed in the program that was different and very powerful and helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
I found it used to, almost in a way I would describe it as teasing things out of us, that in a way that almost I felt like with the one-to-ones with Charmaine, like if I said, this is my goal, then that dig deeper. Actually, how are you going to achieve that? What are the tools that you will need? What is the timeline? How will you manage if you need childcare, for instance? And do you want to set yourself a deadline? And the work, a few times, I would say, I don't pray if you would agree, that when you write in response and then look again back, it does that, it teases stuff. And it really, honestly, gives you these moments of the light bulb moment where you go, oh my God, it all just totally makes sense. And it does, I know we've talked about goals, but the stuff that it's shifted for myself personally, like even in boundary setting, I am a completely different person. And that enables me to teach my daughter that as well, and also show her healthy relationships. And I hope to set her up for a positive experience with navigating throughout life.
It's that ripple effect that Charmaine was describing, isn't it? Doing this work and then that ripple effect outwards.
Yeah.
And Charmaine, obviously you are an expert and a proponent in the use of writing for resilience and in incorporating poetry, obviously, as part of that work. But what is it, do you feel, that is unique about doing this work in this way? What is it that really helps to make this more powerful?
I think it is the integrating the creativity, because I think the thing about creativity, sometimes you can just paint or colour something in and that just makes you feel good. But if you use it in a way that really helps you to dig deep and to look at things in a different way, it makes it easy. It doesn't feel hard, does it, when you're writing in response or thinking about what somebody's said in a poem, and does that, and it makes sense. It's what Priya was talking about earlier on. There's an African American poet called Rita Dove. I mean, I love her poem, and it's called Dawn Revisited. And the first couple of lines are, imagine you wake up with a second chance. And I think that's exactly what this is. Every day you wake up with a second chance to change the trajectory of your life, to change what it is you want to do in your community, what you want to do in your home. And like you say, that has the ripple effects. So I think by combining the group work, the individual work, the creativity, and integrating that all together, I think that's what makes it more powerful. And writing, there's a lot of research out there that says how powerful writing is, and how actually writing also means that you can have less GP appointments. There's so much writing can do for emotional and physical health. So, and the one thing about writing, what I think is really powerful, Kay Adams, she's an author from the US, and she talks about journaling, and she talks about how your therapist can go away on holiday and all sorts of reasons you might not meet, but you've got a pen that's there for 24 hours a day, doesn't go on holiday. So you can just jot things down and write things down. You can already hear from what Priya and Shari are saying. When they look back at what they've written, that in itself also propels them to the next level, because they're recognizing how far they've come. So we can already see how powerful writing is. And when you put it in with creativity and other approaches and coaching, I think you absolutely more likely you're setting yourself up for success. So I think it's that, just having all those different things together that we know work is going to make that difference.
And as you say, there's a huge amount of evidence for the power of writing. I know myself, even as a jobbing coach, when I do reflective writing and writing about the future, it can be very powerful, but it can also be a challenging habit to keep. And I'm wondering, Charmaine, how do you support the women on your programme, particularly if maybe they've never done reflective writing or haven't engaged with poetry, say, since they were at school or something? What sorts of things do you do to support them?
I think we can all write for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to, and we're not asking for essays, we're not asking for anything like that. And I might just suggest, if they've never done writing before, you don't have to have an experience of poetry. I did a little bit of literature at school, but I don't use poetry therapy because I've got this massive love of poetry. That's not what brought me there. It was a tool. Yes, I love poetry now, but it wasn't because I love poetry and this is what I'm going to do. For me, I saw the evidence as a tool, and so that's why I use it. And one of the things, and a lot of people know that, if you even just write down 3 things that you're grateful for, how long is that going to take you? And you'll just see the difference in that and how that might make you feel, what you've achieved for the day. And I've got enough evidence, enough people have shared with me, I've tried that and I've did it for a week and it's made me feel different. And so I know it works. And so it's encouraging people to step out of their comfort zone, do something you wouldn't necessarily have done before, because that's what coaching is, isn't it? At one point you was never able to ride a bike, or one point you was never able to drive a car, but you can do it and you do it without even thinking. So I might give people an example of that. So it's just that, just taking, sometimes it's just little small steps. And when they see other people doing that, again, that's where the group work is really powerful and helpful.
Yeah, those small steps, as you say. I want to just have a think about maybe the challenges, either as participants in this programme or as the deliverer of it. What maybe was the most challenging thing that you each experienced being part of this programme that you're willing to share?
I don't know, because I think we all individually found our rhythm. There's accountability when you're in a group. There is accountability. And I think it's hard, isn't it? Sometimes when you do something, you don't realise, actually, it's like when someone says, what do you do when you get out of bed? You go, well, just get out of bed. But I definitely think the accountability, and once you found your rhythm, then you set yourself the time aside each day and then once a week, and then just knowing that commitment and there's people cheering you on. The organisation, once I'd got that sorted, that was the biggest hurdle for me.
Yeah, thank you. And how about for you, Priya?
I think there were different kinds of challenges, but again, in hindsight, because it's done, it feels easier. But just trying to remember the day to day, I think there were a few. So one for me was, I think, just making time for it, because I was working through it. I was still not confident enough asking my employer for time or for sharing that I'm on this program. And I think in organizations now, over the years, I've seen people are getting more comfortable, sadly, taking time out for this sort of thing and employers giving it. And I had certainly been burnt along the way, because there were times when I had asked for support and it didn't land very well. So there was a learning curve there for me also, but not sharing striking that balance with my employer, and personally then just booking time for it. And then I think the other one was, because this was a house purchase, as you can imagine, it went back and forth a few times. And I remember the one-to-one sessions now seem quite trivial, but there would literally be conversations with Charmaine with, oh, now suddenly this sale seems to have dropped off and there isn't a place, and now there are 2 properties and I can't decide between the 2. And they are actually life-altering decisions. So they were things that would obviously worry me to no end. And those were the sorts of challenges. And then the final one was just that itch to get it over the line in time for the course. You want just to be able to say you've done it. It didn't happen in time for that. It becomes like how personally vested you become to it, and then the timelines. But the learning also is that it's not about hitting a certain deadline, it is achieving the goal. So there were lots of learnings and through the different sorts of challenges along the way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I think I would add as well that on reflection, I think sometimes you, as part of the planning, just to not be doing it in a rush, like especially if you're lone parenting without much of a network around you, you sometimes need to make sure that like some of the work is going to bring up stuff. So you need that time just to have a little bit of self-care after, to not be darting from one thing to the next. That would probably be the challenges of trying to navigate that when you're the main carer for whether it's children or an adult or anyone.
Absolutely. This isn't happening in a vacuum, is it? And so recognising that work and family scenario. Charmaine, what was your biggest challenge or learning?
Yeah, so the biggest learning I would say is because I was working with this particular client group, when it came to doing the one-on-one coaching, often they might have experienced me in a different role, of more of a supporting role. So when I'm wanting to help them think about, okay, where are you now? How are we going to get there? They're focusing on the past stuff. And so I'm saying, okay, so if we can just leave that stuff here for a moment, just put it down for a moment and let's stay and focus. It's important. Yes, it's difficult, but let's just stay focused on moving forward. I think that was a bit of a challenge. We managed it and it was fine. So this time round in the programme, I've also got another coach on board and she'll be doing the coaching. And whereas the people that don't know her, she's got no history with them about, I used to support you around domestic abuse. And she's no nonsense anyway. So she's going to really focus on, okay, so how are we going to get you there? So I think that was one thing that I really learned was the challenge. And my hope is that I'll run more of these programs, and not necessarily specifically for survivors, because it absolutely can lend itself to young people or a particular group of people as well. And so, yeah, I think it's just refining it. And if I've got other coaches that will do that, the one-to-ones, I can still do, like I say, I'll always love group work over individual, whereas I can stick with the coaching clinics and facilitating the speakers that are coming in. And this time round, we've got a financial coach who's coming to speak, because when you're creating your dream life, you need to be able to fund it. And when we're thinking about wealth creation, that's what her specialism is, wealth creation and financial coaching. So this time round, we've got somebody like that on the programme that I know will make a massive difference to the women that we're working with this time round.
Charmaine, as you talk about that, it's clear you've already got plans for this next stage. But if we were looking, very coachy question, if we were 5 years from now, what would your hopes be for this particular programme?
Yeah, that we're definitely running this programme with different sectors of the community. Yeah, and just expanding, probably about 10 programmes, 15 programmes. And we might even shorten them, make them longer, depending on who we're going to be working with, yeah.
So we'll watch this space.
Yes, definitely.
Now, we're reaching towards the end of the conversation. I feel like we could talk for several more hours. But I want to check with you, Priya, and with Shari. What's one thing that you're taking away from your involvement in this programme? If there was one thing, one learning, or one thing that you hold with you as you go forward, what might that be?
Personally, how much it's shifted everything for me to move forward. But on a wider note, I'd love to think that there would be other people that would maybe reach out and want to work with other local authorities, because there are such disparities across the UK. And I feel privileged to have been given this opportunity. And the group work is so beneficial. It's easy for any one of us to sit and have coaching or counselling and feel like that's only our story and no one understands it. And the beauty of doing group work is that 60% of people might in the group suddenly say, oh yeah, that was like that for me. And you suddenly go, oh, I thought I was the only one. And if that could fit as part of Charmaine's 5-year plan, that I think I've had experience of other counties where there's just no support for survivors out there. And I think that would be my takeaway. So if I could sing it from the hilltops, I would.
Thank you. And I suppose that raises the point around what others in the profession could do and what others working with survivors of domestic abuse could do to make coaching more accessible. Priya, what do you take away?
I think I would echo everything that Shari has said, but if I were to step back a little, the thing that I've personally taken away from the program is the benefit of this being an integrative approach, because as I said, I liked writing and then it stopped working for me. And then the group coaching bits of it were super helpful. So there were all these great elements built into it. And personally now, when I think about how am I going to help myself, I don't think of one thing. I think of these are all good things. Sometimes it's about starting with whatever works for you in that moment. Do that, and then the other bits will follow. Because I think, again, what happens very often is we've all got great habits, and then something happens, new baby or you move countries or whatever, and then those good habits drop, and then you replace them with bad habits, and then suddenly like the whole thing comes crumbling down. So there are all these tools, whether it's asking for support, whether it's writing, getting one-to-one, but start somewhere or do that one thing that you can. And that's what I want to always remember.
Yeah, powerful. Do that one thing. We can start somewhere, can't we? Thank you. Charmaine, any closing thoughts around what you're taking away from your involvement with the programme so far?
Yeah, I think what's great is just a few years ago, I remember working with my coach on saying, look, I really want to put this programme together. How am I going to do it? Am I going to get it funded? How's this going to work? And here I am because of coaching. So for me, coaching is so powerful. I've always got a coach in everything that I do. And it's because of the power of coaching why I'm here and able to offer this program to amazing women that I've been working with. And it is great. They're so inspiring. It's unbelievable. It really inspires me to go out there and do even more things that's going to help other people as well.
Well, thank you. I've certainly been inspired by 3 amazing women on the call today. So thank you to all of you for your time and your insights and your openness. It's been fascinating to hear about Writing for Resilience, the coaching programme working with survivors of domestic abuse. And I wish you all the best in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For over 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or visit our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. Explore our digital learning hub and enjoy our extensive library of on-demand webinars, member benefits, interviews, podcasts, and a portfolio of live events featuring thought leadership, tools, models, and the latest industry trends to help you develop your coaching expertise.